Welcome back, everybody. Episode number 28 of the Roses and Rhetoric podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Hackett. Joining me, as always, my charming co-host,
Joseph Stanford.
As you can tell, Joe is doing a bit of infield research for the softball GM position. Joe, tell us a little bit about where you're at right now and what you're doing there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day here in Portland, Oregon at Wallace Park. As you can see behind me, I'm sitting in left field of a little league baseball game right now, featuring the Brittonville Dynamite playing in gray, and they're going up against the Ainsworth Weed Whackers, repping the white jersey. So I'm out here scouting out some talent. We have that intramural softball league that we've been looking for a GM, maybe even some players. So we got the camera focused on them back there. I say first one to hit me with a fly ball, I think we got to sign them up. What do you think, Jim?
I think so too. Having a player that can crush the ball out to left field is an invaluable skill, as we learned from Brian Anderson on our previous GM interview position. Left field generally is a position where you might put your weaker players. And if you have a batter that's able to get the ball over to that side of the field, it can make a big difference, whether that be a left-handed hitter, a switch hitter, or somebody who, even batting right-handed, can still crush the ball over to that side of the field. These are some good play. Joe, who are the big playmakers right now out on the field? Have you noticed any talent so far?
I think the coaches are the real big playmakers right now. We got some good characters, some good beer guts, and classic Nike tennis shoes on the field.
I've always have said beer is the water of intramural softball, and I think you would agree with me on that.
You got to stay hydrated.
Absolutely. You got to stay hydrated, and you need to really have the right mindset for intramural softball. If you take it too seriously, you might overlook the simple plays. In my experience, in softball, especially in the intramural league, is about having the right state of mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as Brian noted, also you need to have plenty of sunscreen.
Plenty of sunscreen. I am looking forward to this. It looks, we're seeing a lot of good action behind you right now in the field. It looks like a beautiful day out in sunny Portland, Oregon. This is one of the few days of sunshine the city will have all year, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. So you got to soak it up when you can, even if that means sitting in left field of a live baseball game.
Well, it's the best seat in the house, and I think you're really lucky to be there. And this looks like a lot of fun. And you're shooting on your iPhone. You're probably running about 35% battery right now.
Oh, if that, dude.
If that's being generous. Everybody knows that you get your optimum iPhone battery when you're streaming on Zoom outside on your network rather than through Wi-Fi. So we'll be cruising through this episode real quickly.
Well, actually, that's a good point. Maybe I should turn on my screen brightness a little bit. I'm getting a lot of glare from the sun.
Yeah. My wife showed me a new feature on the iPhone. New feature meaning that we learned about it. It may have been a feature the whole time, but a feature where you can make your screen black and white in an effort to make your screen less interesting, which will help you spend less time on your phone. I thought that was interesting.
Is that really what it's for?
That's what she was telling me, and what was funny is, so she did this on a Monday, and by Wednesday she was back to full color. So I mean, it must have really been dull because she went back to the normal setting. But yes, no, I'm always impressed by the iPhone camera quality. Joe's iPhone, you can see on the bottom of the screen, but coming through crystal clear from the sunny Portland, Oregon. As always, Joe, we begin by getting a roundup of the week. Any big updates, any big things in the inbox? What's going on in the world of Joseph Stanford?
So I can't talk about them yet, but there are some big updates coming from Joe's inbox. So I would stay tuned for those over the next couple of weeks.
You hear that, folks? You got to keep on coming back for Joe's inbox. Only going to get bigger and better. I will start to show off, plugging a little bit. Our episode next week, we are meeting with a neuroscience researcher going back to San Francisco to meet up with research group over there, doing some interesting neuroscience research. If that kind of topic interests you, If you enjoyed the interview with Francisco 3 weeks ago, be sure to check out this one. It'll be with another lab mate out there doing some good research. And we'll be talking to him about the research itself, and also getting into a little bit of the theory of science and the theory of neuroscience. As I mentioned last week, kind of our goal is to build segments of the show, and we're kind of slowly building towards this neuroscience segment. So we'll have a few more after this person as well. But be sure to check in next week for that one as well.
Yeah. And to add to that, I know a lot of our listeners may be intimidated by neuroscience or topics like that, but I think, Jim, you and I are aligned on this, that we want to be able to present this information and to interview these scientists in a way that's digestible by the masses. We're going to take a conscious effort to make it a little easier on the ears to listen to and keep it interesting.
I think
I'm excited about our guest, though. I think that it's going to be a great content.
This lab, and I forget the name of the lab itself, but I mean, this lab is really at the cutting edge of this research, as are the people in the lab. They're on the cutting edge as well. And one of the things that Joe and I purposefully do is we try to minimize our contact with our guests prior to them coming on the show. And one reason we do that is because the more that Joe and I interact with the guest before the show, we're able to do learning off air that we then bring onto the show. And in a sense, we separate ourselves from the audience. And so one of the things that we try to do is we try to keep ourselves as close to the audience as possible, so that when one of these researchers or one of these specialists explains something to us, if we don't understand it, the audience probably doesn't either. And that gives us a chance to align with the audience and to ask questions that we think the audience is probably thinking to themselves before the show begins or during the interview. So that's one thing that Joe and I do try to be conscious of. I mean, of course, we do plenty of background work in terms of reading and that kind of thing, but we do try to minimize some of the specific contacts we have with the guests in order to keep ourselves more in the camp of audience rather than, interviewer who has done a bunch of background research that, as a result, leads to a conversation that's impossible for somebody on the outside to listen in on.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited for this next episode. It's gonna be great. I mean, I'm excited for this episode.
I'm all around this episode. I'm kind of, no. No, I am too. We have a lot of good topics today. I wanted it to start with Joe. You and I have both lived in our fair share of apartments, and I wanted to start by giving my take on what I think is largely the bullshit enterprise of apartment amenities. These are things that apartment complexes advertise to potential renters, and in my experience, they rarely pan out. COVID, the past year has been a year. A lot of people are moving, potentially. I know a lot of people are buying homes. Potentially, a lot of people also will be moving into apartments. But I wanted to give our audience kind of a rundown of things that really matter when you're renting at an apartment, and things that really don't matter, but that they'll probably try and sell you on anyways. And one of the first things that I wanted to mention that I think is largely a bullshit amenity is the, quote unquote conference room that some of these apartment complexes have. Let me tell you something. The only thing that you really want to have access to in a conference room is a printer. That is it. That is all you ever fucking need. Anything else is all bullshit. It doesn't matter they have a bunch of tables and a bunch of computers set up. You're never going to fucking use them. Don't be impressed by it. And first of all, even if you want to use them, usually logging on will be a huge pain in the ass. You're just going to leave your files on there, going to get your identity stolen by some goober gobber living in your apartment complex. Don't do it. When you're looking at the printer, you want the printer to have two things. One, or really let me say three things. The first is you want them to supply the paper. That's the first thing you want. The second thing you want is you want the printer to be able to print off of a USB stick. And number three, you want the print in color. If it has those three things, no other thing in that conference room matters at all. It doesn't matter. You just need the printer. Now, Joe, do you agree with that first assessment on the conference room?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're living in like a small apartment or something and you don't have the real estate for an actual printer. Actually, I don't even know if anyone in my family has a printer these days, just because everyone's moving away from paperless. I will add, though, another benefit of the conference room that I had stumbled upon in my last apartment. And that was when I first moved in, and I wasn't planning on this. This just sort of happened this way. But I got in, and then I got all the utilities turned on, the gas, the electricity, and I sat down and I was about to set up my Wi-Fi, but I was like, maybe I should check to see if there's any networks that I can use, save myself $80 a month or whatever outrageous cost Comcast charges you. And sure enough, my apartment was backed right up onto a conference room. The conference room has the printer, as it does the free Wi-Fi. And for my entire tenure at that apartment, I never had to spend money on Wi-Fi. So that would be another amenity that I would keep an eye out for.
I agree, and let's broaden that to access to Wi-Fi in the conference room, or also sometimes if your apartment has a gym, they'll have the Wi-Fi network in the gym as well. Another good amenity to have. But that brings me to the next one, which is the gym. Now, I understand that an apartment gym can come in handy in a bind or in a pinch. I have never seen an apartment gym that really is all that useful outside of the few times where you really just cannot make it to an actual gym. Every complex I've been to, they've showed us the gym, they tell us how great it is. It's never great. It just never is. It's the same bullshit machines, a few treadmills. I mean, if that's all you're doing, that's fine. But again, it's a thing where when you're on the tour, it probably doesn't make that much of a difference to the apartment experience.
Yeah, well, not all of us can lift the big weights like you can, Jim.
We're gonna get to the big weights in a moment, because it really what I want to get to with this apartment thing is this. I think ultimately what you want in an apartment complex, and I was realizing this as we were moving into our most recent apartment last year. And basically, when you're on these apartment tours, everything that the salesperson tells you is going to be a lie. So you can't listen to it anyways. But we were walking by and I'm thinking, all right, is the complex quiet? Oh, it's very quiet. Really? Because there's a highway right there. How quiet can it really be? Is it safe? Oh, it's very safe. Well, that person over there is applying the 5-second rule to a used needle. How safe can this place be? I mean, you go on these tours, it's like they're just talking to you like you're in the bizarro world. So the things to pay attention to: 1, safe location; 2, quiet complex, quiet unit; and 3, you want the gate to open and close easily. You want the gate to be functioning. You want the clicker they give you to work all the time. These little things make a big difference. And the third thing you want to pay attention, or the fourth thing to pay attention to, is parking. Because nobody wants to come home to their apartment late at night and not be able to find a parking space. But if you have those 4 things covered, I'm telling you, that's really all that you need. Everything else is going to be some kind of amenity you're probably not going to get that much use out of. So don't pay attention to it. Focus on those 4 big things, and you will be in good shape. So, Joe, like I said, I want to make sure our listeners know I think these apartments, they try and throw a lot of flash your way, but it ends up not amounting to a whole lot at the end.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Don't get caught up on worrying about a dishwasher in your apartment or a washer dryer unit. Those things really fail in comparison to, like you said, the color printer.
Yes, the color printer for sure. And printing in color is a great experience for anybody that's ever. If you've never printed in color before, try it out. All right, very good, very good. All right, so that brings us to. I have a story for this week. It's catching off of our story off of Francisco 3 weeks ago. Anybody who heard that episode knows that a day or 2 days before we shot that episode, I got my first COVID shot, and essentially didn't really have any symptoms. Maybe a little bit of a headache, but nothing really that big. I got my second COVID shot on Thursday night at around 5 or 6 p.m. When you get it, they make you wait 15 minutes to make sure that you don't have any kind of serious allergic reaction. I did not. I felt fine after I got it. Um, I will tell you the hardest part of that whole experience was trying to keep preoccupied in a CVS for 15 minutes. I mean, there's nothing really to look at in a CVS. I was kind of like wandering around, and I realized I had spent like 10
Yeah.
minutes in like the feminine hygiene section, and everyone's like looking at like I'm some kind of creep, and I'm like, I gotta get out of here. So, but besides that little brush of awkwardness, I felt fine. Got home around 7 or something like that. Whole night pretty much felt good. And around midnight, my arm started to hurt, and I got a
Mm.
headache, and I couldn't sleep. I woke up the next morning. I like wake up. I kind of like just got up because I couldn't really fall asleep the whole night. And I will tell you, I like a horse kicked me in the head. I mean, it was a terrible headache for like the whole day. I mean, it was, and I had the chills, and I had the achiness, and all the things that they tell you about. And the nurse that was actually really funny because she was like, "Well, how did you do the first time?" And with the symptoms, oh, I didn't have anything. I felt great. She's like, "Yeah, the second time, much more common to experience symptoms." And I was like, "I think I'll be okay." I was incorrect. It was a brutal night, brutal day. Probably didn't feel better until around 7 or 8 p.m. the next day. Um,
Mm.
but I wanted to get that out there, keep our skin in the game, our transparency. I did get the first shot, gave an update on that one. Wanted to give an update on the second shot as well. But I'm back to my charming self, as everybody can see. Um, so all in all, not too bad, but it was a rough day. So anybody getting their second Pfizer shot, prepare for a rough day. If not the first day, or not the first dose, the second dose.
Yeah.
You get better, but it's a rough day. I'm going to be honest. It was a rough day.
I just saw a headline today actually that for the Pfizer shot specifically, it's likely there's going to be a third shot required towards the end of the year. So get ready for that. Huh?
Yeah, hopefully it'll be interesting to see how the side effects compare dose to dose. Because like I said, the first one I really didn't feel much of anything. Um, So all good fun out in Pfizer land. But and for anybody wondering, no, Pfizer is not a paid sponsor of the show. Although, like they want it to be, we would sell out like that. So Pfizer, give us a call if you're looking.
Yeah, we would change our review of the shot.
Yeah. Oh,
Just like that.
I felt better. I felt headache. I gained 10 IQ points for crying out loud. I got
slept like a baby.
Something like put me right to sleep. I fell asleep right in the CVS chair. I had to wake me up. I was they gave me like a 20% off coupon at CVS. I was walking around, and I not that I really wanted, so I didn't buy anything, but
Nothing in the feminine hygiene section that caught your eye?
No, nothing in that section. And I was looking, I try to like eat pretty healthy during the week. On the weekends, I usually do a little cheat mealing, but I thought, if I buy it on Thursday, I don't know if I trust myself to not eat it tonight. So I thought I just better get out of there and get back to my humble abode and prepare for the evening ahead. But really, my plan was I'll get the shot and then I'll sleep through the night when it hurts. Turns out that was a horrible idea because I just couldn't go to sleep.
Yeah,
So,
well,
lots of fun. Lots of fun, everybody. But
yeah, Jimmy's 5G capable now.
I'm 5G capable. I get good reception, and yeah, if Pfizer hears this episode, give me a call. I'm always happy to be a celebrity spokesperson for the pharma industry. Let me know. Very good, Joe. Let's see what we have on here. You want to do our shout outs? You want to do our
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Week? All right, let's start with our first shout out. This one goes out to a fan of the show, Alec Mezonic. And he's been a fan of the show since the beginning. You probably, if you have followed the show on Instagram, you've seen him on Instagram. He's given us a couple of segment ideas for the show. Most recently, it was his idea to do a little tribute to DMX, who passed away recently. So Alex, thank you for the content and thank you for following the show. We really appreciate it. The second shout out this week goes to a person by the name of Grant Brogi. Grant Brogi runs a gym called the Strength Company out in Costa Mesa, California. He is kind of part of the Starting Strength community that you and I have talked about before. That's the Mark Ripito program, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason that Grant Brogi was on my list for this week is because, and Joe, I think I sent you this story, but he's been running a gym out in California now for I guess a number of years. I don't really know for how long. And when the COVID lockdowns began in California, running a gym, obviously, that's one of the businesses that's going to be hit hard during a lockdown because it involves doing things in person, of course. And so he developed a rather ingenious idea. He did it. It was basically, from what I understand, it was like a two-step program. The first thing he did is he brought the equipment in his gym to the members' homes. So he essentially emptied out his gym and gave it to members of the gym so they could work out at their homes. So he kind of like gave these people, garage gyms. That was the first step. Obviously, you're not going to be able to give everybody everything, but you divvy it up as best you can.
Yeah, how does that work? Like, you can only have so many squat racks, right?
Yeah, so this is the second part. So he did that. That was phase one. But then after that, he and a few of his friends figured out a way to cheaply produce squat racks using things like plywood, cement,
Okay.
steel, and they began making these kind of makeshift squat racks at the gym. So he literally converted what was first a strength training gym. COVID happened. He pivoted real quickly, and now he's making weight. He's making lifting equipment. Now I like that.
Incredible.
It's awesome. It's the I mean, that to me is a self-starter, obviously. That goes without saying. But I just like the ingenuity of it, that they purposefully try to figure out what is the cheapest, quickest way that we can make squat racks to get to people so they can lift weights. And, it was the perfect example of just having a solid can-do attitude. He got some friends together. He hired people in the local area that had been laid off from their jobs, hired them to make this equipment for him and to sell it to other people. And just a great story. Just a great story of somebody combining a little bit of ingenuity, a little bit of hard work, and within a pretty short period of time, completely transformed their business to be doing this. Now, from what I gather, I think that his gym has since reopened. So I'm not sure if they're still making the racks or not. I'm not sure, but I thought that was just a great story that he kind of came up with that idea and put it into practice. And the other thing he did is he began going to other gyms in the area and got their equipment to bring to people's homes as well. But really just somebody demonstrating a solid commitment to their work and a solid commitment to what they stand for, which in this case would be weight training, and figuring out a way to give people access to that part of their life, even when times prevented the normal operations from occurring. So ingenuity, hard work, determination, clear vision, all those things coming into practice. Grant Brogi, God bless you. It was a hell of a story. I really enjoyed it. We're gonna give you a shout out on the episode. We'll put your Twitter and all that other stuff in our below the video. Follow him, check him out. He's always posting stuff on his Twitter, by the way, of people at his gym that are doing things like PRs and getting good lifts in. And so it's a fun account to follow for that reason as well. But also just because of this story and this can-do attitude that I think it's just a good story to know and to share and to read about.
Yeah, you love to hear selfless acts like that. Because if you think about it, if you're enabling and teaching people to make their own gym equipment, that's kind of a bad business model for your gym. You know what I mean? You're kind of replacing yourself amongst these people.
So he's still making it. He's making it and then selling it to people. But it was
like, but then these people now have the equipment at their houses. Yeah. They no longer have a need to come to the gym. And that just shows Grant's dedication to fitness, to the health and well-being of the people around him. And I think that's something that you only see at these local gyms. You're not going to see that at your big big box 24-hour fitness or LA Fitness or whatnot. And that's part of the reason I like the starting strength program, because it's a program for the people.
It's a program for the people. LA Fitness, they wanted, I remember one time I tried to get the person at the front desk. I was talking to them and I was like, the only thing that your gym doesn't have. Now I'm going to say this and I'm going to get some flack from the starting strength community because they actually don't like the thing that I'm about to say. So let me preface by saying I don't use this equipment, but I almost did for a little bit. Let me kind of preface this by saying that. And it was the hex bar, which is the one you stand inside of. So Mark Ribito does not like the hex bar. I don't want to get into the reasons why. Just suffice to say, Mark, if by some bizarro thing you listen to this, I use the straight bar when I deadlift, so don't worry about it. But in any event, I talked to the person at LA Fitness and I was like, hey, can I bring in a hex bar if I were to buy it? Like, I'll bring it in. Can I use it here? And the guy was like, no. And I was like, I'm gonna bring it in. And it was just a good example of as Grant Brogi commented on one of our things one time, you got to find a local establishment, and I think he is correct.
Jim, the hex bar story is a good example of why it's better to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. Yes. I think and that's actually what happened at my local LA Fitness. Was there was a hex bar there for a long time, and I love the hex bar. I would use it all the time. Although the worst lifting injury I've ever gotten in my life, maybe the worst injury in my life was occurred while using a hex bar, but we can get into that at a later point. That might just be user error rather than the bar itself. But yeah, and then one day it was just gone, and I asked, and I was like, yo, like, what happened to the hex bar? Where did it go? And their response was like, oh, someone just brought it in. Like, that wasn't like LA Fitness sanctioned equipment, so it had to go. And I don't understand. Why would they not have the hex bar at LA Fitness? Yeah. Like, why would they not purchase one? And then why would they not use the one that was there?
Let's think about things they do have at LA Fitness. Those little balancing ball things. Well, you tell me, how is that any safer than a hex bar? You're literally saying this is meant to be wobbly. I mean, you're gonna get hurt on it. How is that okay? But I can't use a hex bar? I mean, are you kidding me? Yeah. It's fun times at LA Fitness. And remember, you got to cancel either through snail mail or in person, I think. Or maybe not even in person. It's a pain in the ass. But yeah, great Brogi. Shout out to him. Great story. Again, if you happen to be in the California area, check him out. California. If you happen to be in the Costa Mesa area of California, check him out. The gym is called The Strength Company, and if you're looking to buy some equipment, maybe buy from him if he is still selling it. Yes, very good. I like that story quite a bit. And one of our episodic things, we'll probably do one on weightlifting. I got to get back to the gym. My plan is, that I got my vaccine in a couple of weeks, hopefully getting back into the groove of things, and we'll do a segment on weightlifting on that as well. But for today, Joe, I think it's time that we move on to our album of the week. Now, for everybody who is wondering, normally Joe reads albums of the week. How is Joe going to read the album of the week if he's filming on his phone? He can't look at the email on his phone when he's on his phone. And so what we're going to do is, because Joe didn't use the printer at his apartment complex to print out a copy of the review from our correspondent, we are going to share it on my phone with Joe reading it. And we're going to be very careful to not give away the identity of our correspondent. And I'm going to be very careful here. All right, Joe, ready when you are.
Yeah. And again, like that, here at Roses and Rhetoric, we're all about solving problems and A/B testing. So this is another way. And you know what? The listener or the viewer can now read along with me as I stumble through the review.
Imagine a little ball bouncing along the syllables as Joe reads this thing. All right, Joe, when you're ready, our album of the week.
Okay. The album of the week is Silent Hour / Golden Hour, and it's by Daniel Rossen. You can tell the audience around me is very excited for this review. Okay, so the notes. The guitar is crazy, feels lonely, but hopeful. The horns are kind of triumphant. There is still a tinge of sadness, although it sometimes feels warm. There is bliss in the mess. There is madness all around. It just feels like it accepts all the bullshit and still trudges on with grace. So if we move down, we go to the review. So throughout Silent House / Golden Mile, Daniel Rossen displays his virtuosity on the guitar. In fact, it is almost hard to believe that one man could create so much sound simply using a guitar. Rossen creates such lush and verdant sounding landscapes. The sound is so grand, yet at times it feels so lonely. It is similar to the feeling of walking in pure nature, when you realize how vast the world can be and how small your role truly is. It is a bath of sense of freedom and terror with the slightest tinge of somber acceptance. The track Golden Mile captures this feeling best with the lyrics, "This is bliss in this mess. There is no madness all around." I'd recommend listening whenever you have a break, as an EP, Silent Hour / Golden Mile is a quick and refreshing listen. So again, another amazing review from our chief musical correspondent.
I really enjoyed this.
I totally enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
And like always, I love the tasting notes or the pairing. And it's a short album. It's something good to throw on when you just need a quick break. You're not looking for a full album endeavor. I can't recommend this one enough. I think this is another solid choice.
I love this guitar style that you hear in this album. It's the kind of guitar where, I don't really know how it almost sounds like a banjo, I guess, and in the sense that it's I believe that the fingers, rather than doing this with the guitar, this is all technical, of course, is like kind of strumming with all the fingers or something like that. But that's the way that it sounds. It sounds like that. As you can tell, I am not the official R&R correspondent for music because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But it was a really good album. I really enjoyed it. And Daniel Rossen, I thought, did a fantastic job. I listened to this album on Friday, actually, during work. Pulled it up on YouTube. We try to find songs that people can listen to for free on YouTube, with the hope that you will listen to it there and then potentially go and buy it. And this one was really a lot of fun, fun album, not too long. And I enjoyed the song Golden Mile, Silent Hour. That was a good song. But all the songs on there were really great. And check it out. We'll put it all on our Twitter and our Instagram, but check them out. Daniel Rossen, Golden Mile, Silent Hour. Normally we on these shows, Joe, we do, we have some fun topics and maybe we give one or two serious topics. I did have, not serious, but a little more complicated, if you will, than how to find a good apartment complex. But before I get into it, I wanted to see if you had anything from your week that you wanted to share on this episode.
Let me think about it. Let's jump into the next topic and come back to me on that.
Very good. Well, today's food for thought, is, from what I gather, kind of a controversial one, but it's still fun to think about either way. And it is this notion of computational irreducibility. To give an idea of computational irreducibility, think of it, and so let me give the background of where this idea comes from. So for anybody who's done math in high school or math in college, and in particular math homework in high school or math homework in college, will all be familiar with Wolfram Alpha. This is the program that you use to do your homework for you. And when Joe and I were in college, you could actually use almost the entirety of Wolfram Alpha completely for free. I think nowadays it's a little more difficult to use. I think that the information that you get for free from going to wolframalpha.com, I think that sometimes they hide the solution. I think you might have to pay for that. Maybe I'm wrong. But regardless, Joe and I think, owe 50 to 60% of our degree to the integration functions
Oh,
on
at
Wolfram
least.
Alpha. At least anyone who has been through vector calculus will know that, and really I would even say second semester calculus, where you do a lot of integrals, is very familiar with Wolfram Alpha and with using it to do those for you. It's out of a program. It's out of a software package. The inventor is name is Stephen Wolfram, who also made Mathematica, which is like a more fleshed out actual programming language. Wolfram is like an app, essentially. Well, that's probably not quite right, but whatever. He's not going to hear this anyways. But
It's a website. Yeah.
Mathematica is a programming language like Python or Java or whatever else is out there. And Stephen Wolfram, actually probably 20 years ago or something like that, came out with a book called A New Science, or The New Science. And one of the key things in this book was his belief in this, and I shouldn't, belief probably isn't the right word, but his idea, let's say, of computational irreducibility. And so what Stephen Wolfram did is he wrote a few lines of very simple computer code that would generate random displays of pixels on the screen, basically. He calls these things cellular automata. But if you were to look at a screen, what it would basically look like is, imagine you have like a checkered board, but the black and white squares are essentially appearing in random order. And so what Stephen Wolfram did is he came up with a bunch of different, what he called rules. And these rules would specify how these cells would change their color as you move down the different rows. And what Wolfram found is that for certain programs that he came up with, there was no way to predict, say, the 10th row without going through and calculating the appearance or the pattern of the first 9. And so there's no equation that you could type into that would tell you, oh, on row 10 is going to be black, black, white, black, white, black. You had to figure out, and the way that the rules work is that each preceding row impacts the row below it. And so whatever the row above it is.
Wait, did you say the rows were random, or the rows are not random?
Not random. That's not the right word. It's the rules that you specify at the beginning essentially look at the row that you're on, and then use that row as input to generate the row below it. So the word random was wrong. What I meant to say is that there's no way to figure out what the 10th row will look like without calculating the 9th row, and before that the 8th, so on and so forth. And so basically, you have to go through every row to get to row 10. And the notion of computational irreducibility would be to look at a situation that would be computationally reducible, which would mean something like this. In a computationally reducible problem, you'd be able to look at the first row and calculate what the 10th row would be without having to go through the intermediate steps. And so this notion of computational irreducibility is really that idea. The idea is that there are problems where, in order to know what the next step will be, or in order to know what the 10th or 11th step will be, you have to calculate each preceding step. You can't skip ahead to the other step. So let me kind of lay that out there. Again, I used the word random earlier. That was the wrong word to use.
Yeah. So I think that's a good conceptual explanation of it.
Yeah.
Can you bring it down to like what the applications of this would be for like the average person?
Yes. So let's start with a situation where you can reduce things computationally. And so this whole thing came about by basically, Stephen Wolfram talking about how in physics, what we do is we figure out an equation, and that equation allows you to predict the phenomena of, any future event without having to calculate each intermittent step. So an example of this would be something like, if I have a ball in my hand and I throw it, I throw the ball in the air. I can calculate where that ball will land, say 100 feet away from me or something like that, without having to model every foot that the ball travels. I can just look at the input velocity, the angle that I throw it at. If you want to be detailed, figure out wind resistance, or in the great tradition of physics, you can just ignore wind resistance either way. But essentially, with the input specified, I can calculate where the ball will land without having to provide a detailed trajectory of where the ball will go. Imagine a world where, in order to know where the ball will land, I have to figure out each step the ball takes to get there.
I would hate such a world.
That would be difficult, right? Unfortunately, and here's the kicker, functionally, a lot of things in life are irreducible in the sense that it's really hard to predict where you will be in 10 years. And then, in fact, we don't really have that
It's
capacity.
impossible.
It's impossible. We don't really have that capacity to do that. And as a result, our day-to-day experience, really, for the most part, is that we live in a world that functionally, if you will, is computationally irreducible. We cannot predict with certainty where we will end up on day 99 without knowing where we are on day 98, day 97, 96, all the way back to day one. And this, of course, ties in, and of course, Taleb talks about this in Black Swan, but this also ties in with the notion of a black swan, because what a black swan event is an event that is rare but has dramatic effect. And so if you're thinking, why is your life computationally irreducible? It's because not only do you lack sufficient knowledge of your quote unquote input conditions to specify the outcome, but you also have no way of knowing when a black swan will arise. You have no way of knowing when some unforeseen event will occur that will just completely nullify your predictions. Anybody who wants an example of this, just think of all the vacations that were planned 6 months before the COVID lockdowns began. All those vacation plans were ruined. Nobody would have predicted that. Nobody would have thought that was going to be an issue. If you would have bought a plane ticket a year in advance thinking, you know what, I'll know where I'll be in a year from now because my life is predictable and on these rails and I'm going to be fine, you would have completely missed it. And so there's this notion that basically life is this way, and we have very little predictive power. And as a result, we are, in a sense, we are forced to live our lives one day at a time. We can do some planning, but plan broadly because any specific plan is not likely to work out very well in the end. But this notion of irreducibility is one that I think it's an idea that's fairly abstract, but I think is an interesting way to view the world because, and this gets brought up by Taleb, other people as well. Would you really want your life to be such that you could predict what it would be like 20 years in the future down to the day? I mean, wouldn't that be kind of a pointless life in some sense? If you just knew what you'd be doing in 20 years, if you just knew what it would be like, there'd be no excitement, there'd be no adventure, there'd be no spontaneity. I think that would be kind of boring, actually.
Right. And I think that's you hear the phrase that the past events do not represent the future trajectories, right? So, and that's just, I think this is like a testimony to that, is that what's happened in the past, like, is not going to determine, just because we're on a certain trend line right now for anything, whether that's it could be like a stock, it could be like your career, relationships, whatever. Yeah, like you said, the black swan event could come through, like something big could happen at the flip of the switch. COVID could happen and it could totally derail any idea you had of what the future would look like. So I think there's something beautiful in that, in the sense that it does create that spontaneity, and it does it keeps things interesting. Like you said, like if you knew what was going to happen, there'd be like no point in experiencing it because you already know what's going to happen. Like, there's no surprises, there's no challenges. It would be mundane.
There's a great quote from Taleb where he says something to the effect of, if I know with certainty what my day will be like tomorrow, I'm already a little bit dead. And I think that I like that. Life is dynamism, life is change, life is, to quote To quote Brad Pitt's character in World War Z, that cinema treasure. Movement is life, and in life is unpredictable. Life is a maintained unequilibrium with the environment. That's one of the characteristics of life. And as a result, it's hard to predict because we're always responding to things and changing to things in unique ways. And this really drives home the point we made last week about optionality, because if you have options, then you can respond to events as they occur rather than having to predict which events will occur in order to satisfy your predictions. So another tie-in to last week as well with stockpiling, of course, another idea from Taleb. But I like these ideas that are a little out of the box. This idea of computational irreducibility, and again, like I said at the beginning, it's controversial. Physicists kind of argue with Wolfram about if it's real or not, and all these debates going back and forth. And I don't fucking know, but it's just fun to think about. It's fun to kind of explore these ideas because I think that these ideas are actually accessible to a lot of people and are fun to think about. And it's fun to think about this idea of, because you can't predict the future, you have no choice but to live in the present. Well, I mean, where have we heard that before? I mean, that all philosophy of all time has been about that, right? So there is a sense in which ideas that are true or that are useful kind of all collide with each other, and you find a bunch of different people saying kind of the same thing. And this is one of those ideas that I think you hear people saying differently, but ultimately kind of living on this idea of living in the moment, if you will. In a sense, you don't have a choice, right? And that's kind of that's kind of the punchline, if you will, of like, who Eckhart Tolle, right? It's like you live in the moment because you have to. You don't have a choice. And I like this add-in with Wolfram and irreducibility, is that even if you didn't want to, you wouldn't be able to predict the future anyway. So you really don't have a choice but to live in the present.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about, like, with a lot of people believe that you can predict the future, provided that you had a computational machine strong enough to predict it. And that operates off the principle that this is all just one uninterrupted collision of particles that has determined everything. So like when the Big Bang happened or whatever, physics was set in such a way that it is possible, if you had enough knowledge, if you had enough computational power, to map out every particle collision, every hydrogen atom that bumps into another hydrogen atom and makes a helium atom or whatever. And if you had a computer strong enough to predict that, then you could, in theory, predict the future. But humans just don't have access to that, or at least not yet.
Yeah, well, and plus, I mean, we get the level of the atom, then you have to take into effect quantum mechanics, which at a fundamental level is uncertain. And so even with the most powerful computer, with the most powerful computer, there would be a limit to the probabilistic outcome of events. And so even with all the knowledge of the universe, there would still be outcomes that wouldn't be resolved until the measurement was made or until the event occurred. And so
like look at like fluid mechanics, or like even the weather, which is just a big fluid mechanics problem, and how good we are at predicting the weather out, even like a day or 2 days from now, or even a week from now. Like, it's just, there's too many variables, and our computers aren't good enough, or our ability to measure or whatnot it's just simply not good enough to measure something like that. So that just shows how far away we are from
I think our weather
accurate
events,
form of prediction.
Even if weather were a perfectly classical system just from the fluid mechanics, you would just need so much. Like, I think he gives an example in here. I forget. I'm rereading the Black Swan right now. He actually gives an example like this, where to be able to predict this, if you have a billiard ball bouncing around a table, in order to predict like the third bounce off of the table or something like that, or I'm sorry, in order to predict the 56th bounce off of the table, you would have to know every location of every particle in the universe, because at that level, the error that comes into play is so tiny. And I think that would be from like a completely classical standpoint, let alone quantum mechanics makes that impossible. Even if it were possible, it was completely classical, it would still be nearly impossible because no one has a computer that big, because the computer would itself have to be inside of the universe. So it becomes interesting. Well, I guess you can just count the computer as part of it. So hit that part out. Still, though, it would be very hard to do. It's essentially impossible to do. But yeah, very good. Very good. I'm going through my list, Joe, and I think those are all my main topics for today. And those are all that I had on the list. As I said, I'm rereading Black Swan. So of course I want to talk about. I bought a new copy of it. So I gave the first copy to my mom, and so I bought another copy, and I'm enjoying it right now.
Did she end up reading it?
I'm still trying to get her to read it. I haven't had success there. Although I haven't asked in a few weeks, so maybe it could be a Black Swan. Maybe she read it. I don't know.
Maybe she's turned some pages.
Yeah. It's it'll be we'll keep on pressing. But anyways, I'm enjoying it. I bought the second edition, which has some additional stuff in the end I haven't gotten to yet, but I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, those are all of my main topics for this week. I'm trying to think if I have anything else I wanted to talk about. I'm excited for next week. Anybody listening to this now, come back next week. We have our guest, a neuroscience researcher from UCSF, coming on the show, talking about their research, and it'll be good. It'll be a lot of fun. But Joe, I think that's all that I got. Anything you wanted to add before we close out?
I wish I could give an update on this game right now or the score, but I don't know. There's no scoreboard or anything. I haven't been paying attention.
I think.
But, it seems like there's plenty of talent out there on the field, though.
At least you haven't gotten hit. That's really the main thing. That's
a victory in itself.
I like that. Very good. Well, everybody, we're gonna close it out. Episode number 28 in the bags. We had a lot of fun. I know that we did. Join us next week, episode number 29. Again, talking to a researcher in neuroscience out of UCSF. But until next time, I'm Jimmy Hackett signing off for Joseph Stanford, saying ciao.